right, good morning.
Morning.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right, welcome to today's training. I'm Katie Fielding, and I'm the tech coach at Woodbridge Senior High School. And with me, I have Emily. Emily?
Yeah, sorry. I am the ITC, or the tech coach, over at Freedom High School.
All right, so we're going to be presenting for you today, and we're going to be talking to you about accessibility and also how to use Zoom in your classes. So I'm going to be taking the first half of the session and talking about accessibility, and then Emily will take the second half and talk about Zoom. Please use the chat while I'm presenting to ask any questions, and Emily will be moderating the chat, and she'll feed me some of those questions or answer them directly in the chat for you. And then she and I will switch places, and I'll be moderating the chat during the second half. So hopefully this will be a good overview of accessibility for you and get you really confident in making sure that all of your materials are accessible for your students. So let me, all right. So we made a Canvas course for you, and hopefully you got into that already. We're going to be posting more materials to it today as we go through the session. But the first thing I want you to do is in the course, you're going to see now, if you refresh your page, you're going to see this accessibility Nearpod. And if you're on a mobile device, I'm going to give you a link and you can do that. But we kind of want to give you the experience of what it's going to be like for a student to do a live Nearpod lesson with you. And so we thought we'd just try and do by example. So the link for the Nearpod is in the chat, or you can also access it by refreshing your page in, it's in that module accessibility there. And everyone can see my screen, correct? Okay, great. All right, so during the Nearpod, you guys can focus on your screen, your Nearpod screen, and just kind of be listening to me. Just like a student might do in your course. And so you don't need to necessarily pay attention to me on the video, but pay attention to your Nearpod screen. So this might be a time when, you know, it is really handy to have two monitors. So maybe if you're working with your students, you might want to tell them, hey, if you have like an iPad, let's do the Nearpod on the iPad, and then you can do the be in the Zoom with me on your computer, or vice versa. Or be on the Zoom on your phone and do the work, the Nearpod on your computer, or whatever other kind of interactive activity might be happening. Do that on the computer, and if you have a cell phone or another device, do the Zoom on that, because more devices are better. All right, so has everyone gotten into the Nearpod? See about 30 people, and there's 43 people here, so we're up to 32. If you've never used Nearpod before, in the bottom left corner, I can see how many people are in my Nearpod right now. So that's how I can see if my class is participating. Yeah, good.
Hey, Chef, can you help me get into Nearpod?
And make sure you keep your mics off while we're presenting so that everyone else can hear today. And I'm going to go just mute some people's mics for them. So you do have that feature as the teacher. You'll be able to mute people's mics and also turn off their camera. So it's nice to be able to have that control in your classroom if you're a little bit worried about classroom management. All right, so why do we need to make things accessible? Well, it's the law is the first thing. So that's why it's really important to make things accessible, but also by just kind of meeting that law, we're also making our content available to anyone, whether they have a disability or a need for an accommodation or not. I don't know about you, but I don't have a profound hearing impairment or hearing loss, but I love to watch TV with captions on, no matter, you know, especially some British shows. But just having captions aids me as a watcher to get better context of everything that they're saying. So, you know, accommodations for ADA compliance help everyone. And it's also just a good professional skill to model for our students. Remember, we're kind of preparing them for the jobs of the future. And so many of those jobs are going to be creating web content and just putting the impression of the importance of making all the things accessible is going to be like an important job skill for those future jobs. The accessibility of the web is like a huge market. And so it's really great for us to model that. the next thing, what's a screen reader? Okay, so you might have seen if you've been exploring Canvas that there is something called Immersive Reader built into the page. Immersive Reader is not a screen reader. Immersive Reader is just a reading enhancement tool. So if a student has, yeah, I don't have the audio on because you're hearing me instead of the audio. So I made this also to be like a self-paced module. So, and you could hear my voice if I can play it on my end. And the student could do this on their own. But today, you get the live version of me. So as I was saying, Immersive Reader is not a screen reader. It is just a reading enhancement tool. So it is built into every page in Canvas. So if I was to go to this page, so if you want to look back at my screen, if you need to, you can look over here. And you'll see that that reading Immersive Reader is built into every page. So students have that on every page, but that is not located in quizzes. So just so you know. But when I open that Immersive Reader, it will read the content of the page to me as a student. So do a read aloud. And then it can also do some other grammar things. So I can change how it appears. I can make the text bigger or smaller. I can change the text font. There are fonts that are more accessible for students with dyslexia, for instance. I can change the background color of the page. So if I have a visual need to change the background color, that's available. I can also highlight certain parts of speech, like nouns, verbs, there are none. And then the money page is where I can actually translate this to a language of my choice. So I can translate this page, say, to Filipino, and it would translate, let's say, by whole document. There we go. And yeah, there we go. So those are built into all the pages of Canvas. Emily, are there any questions about accessibility or the Immersive Reader?
Nope, you're all good.
All right, so that's a screen, or that is a reading enhancement tool. That is not a true screen reader. A screen reader is built into a computer and it helps someone navigate their computer. So it would help a person navigate like the file, edit, view, history, like you see at the menus at the top of my screen. It would help a blind person navigate their computer. So some of the things I'm going to be talking about, though, we're going to refer to screen readers, and we're not talking about Immersive Reader. We're talking about someone who cannot see anything on the screen, and this is going to help them purely navigate their computer. So that's why this accessibility is really important. And we may be thinking, okay, I don't have any students that have vision impairment like that, but you have no idea if their caregiver, their parent, their grandparent has a vision impairment, and you may need to be making that stuff accessible for them. So that is just something to keep in mind. All right. The next thing, maybe, where, oh, is just a video, and I'm actually gonna skip it. It's of a gentleman who is showing you how he uses a screen reader. It's available in the classroom to watch later, but I don't really wanna spend my Zoom time with you students watching a video. That's not very productive for all of us. This time as Zoom is supposed to be about human interaction and you getting something from me, not a video. All right, there's also in the classroom accessibility checklist that will go over these things that I'm about to talk about. There's 10 steps to checking your classroom. And so this is the PDF, and it's also going to be in that Canvas classroom for you to print off or save later. All right, so the first step, the first thing you need to make sure that you do is caption videos, okay? So in Canvas Studio, you're able to request captions, and I'm going to show you that now. So if you want to come back over to my screen, that would be a good time. So over in Canvas, you're going to click on that Studio button. And if you record something in Studio, you can request captions for it, or you can just import a video from YouTube and request captions. I personally just prefer to put the YouTube video on a page and not import it into Studio because the captions will remain. But if you wanted to make it a video quiz, then that's a reason that you would import it to Studio. But let's look at this video that I made. And you'll see that on the captions, the Studio page, you'll see this button that says captions. To request captions, all you're going to have to do is select the language that the video is made in. So I was speaking in English. I'm going to select English, and I'll say request. All right, in about 5 minutes, I'll get an email, and it will tell me that my captions were made. Then I'm able to come back here, click review and publish. I get to look them over to make sure they're accurate. The things that are really inaccurate most of the time are like web addresses, or if you say an email that will be wrong. So that's the kind of stuff you need to review. Review it, make sure they're accurate, and then you select publish. And those captions will be accessible to your students in your classroom. Yes, you can upload other languages, and you choose the language it was in. So if you were speaking in French or speaking in Spanish, request the captions in those languages. YouTube does not caption YouTube videos, which is why I don't recommend bringing YouTube videos into Studio unless you're making it a quiz. If you need to caption YouTube videos, there is a website called Amara, and you can request captions. It's like a crowdsourced website. You can request captions to be done there. I personally recommend, if there's something on YouTube, just put it directly on the page. Copy the link, paste it on the page. The captions that are in YouTube will come with it. And the last option I'm going to tell you about is, if you were making direction videos for students, is Flipbridge Shorts. So Flipbridge Shorts are great little videos that you can make. If you're familiar with Flipgrid, this is like the teacher side of Flipgrid. So you can make videos in Flipgrid as a teacher, and they auto caption. I think they're a little bit more engaging than the videos that you can make in Studio, just because you can add filters and stickers and things like that. So I'll show you what they look like. So like the ones that were on the page that you probably watched to get here were that. And you can see that I can edit the captions here. They auto generate just like in a YouTube or in Studio, and I can edit them as here as well. And these are very easy to put onto your Canvas pages. So that's a third option. So we had Canvas Studio, YouTube, and Flipgrid Shorts. Emily, do I have any questions?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. All right. Also, in the same way as captions, if you are having your students listen to podcasts, you also need to provide them with a transcript. So same thing, if they can't hear it, they need to be able to read it. If they can't see it, they need to be able to, or they can't hear it, they need to be able to read it. So, all right, that's number one, captioning. Number two. And here's a little video in here that you can watch later about how to do that captioning. And it will be in the classroom. Second thing is alt text for images. So every image that you put onto the page in Canvas, you need to provide alternate text for. Alt text, again, is for those people using screen readers so that they can get the context and the function of the image. So when I am in Studio or in Canvas, let me just go to a page. Go to a new page. And I'm going to put an image on this page. Load an image. Choose an image from my computer. Let's see what we got. Here we go. The image of Canvas. All right. So when you put an image on the page and you click that image, you'll see what it says image options. You need to go here and you need to give it alt text. This alt text that is here is not good enough, okay? It just says Canvas PNG, that's the file name. It needs to be okay. Okay, we'll do that again. I deleted it accidentally. That caption was not good enough. It was just a file name. When we create alternate text, it has to give the person the context and the description. So I would say Canvas logo, red circle with Canvas below. Like you have to give the whole description of what it is. And then I would say done. And that's accurate alt text for that image. There is also we're going to do a little quiz on how to write alt text next. But so you have to think about the context and the image itself and what you want the person to get out of it. There are going to be some complex images sometimes, and especially in classes like science are going to have complex images. And there are places online you can read to how to write that alt text the best. So on the next page, I want you to just take a look at it, this web page for a bit. I'm going to give you a couple minutes, and then I'm going to give you a little quiz about writing alt text. So I'm going to show you some images, and you're going to get quizzed on which descriptions do you think are best. So just take a couple minutes and look at this web page. Emily, are there any questions in the chat?
What would you recommend for graphs because of accessibility for like a math class or a science class?
Yeah, that's probably the tricky place. I would add a caption to the graph if you can't fit it all in the alt text. But you do have to describe that graph and what it's displaying, which can be tricky if the student's job is supposed to be to display or like to analyze that graph. It's a hard thing. So that's where ideally you want it to be in the alt text. Or, you know, for that particular student, if you know there is that accommodation, you could have an audio file of you describing the graph. Would be an alternate. What about you? Any other ideas, Emily?
No, that's what all I could think of is like use it as an image with a really good alt text and caption.
Yeah.
And then one other question. For YouTube videos, was it link or embed as the best way to ensure the captions come?
They're the same thing. So if I copy the link and I put it on the page, I've embedded it. It's the same.
Okay, that's all.
All right. So hopefully you've taken some time to look at this web page. Gonna have a little quiz. Don't worry, it's not punitive, but we'll just give you an idea to see like what kind of alt text you might use for different pictures. And if you haven't gotten through the whole page, it's okay. I think even just doing the quiz will make you think about some things. So I will go to the next page and go ahead and take that quiz. I'm gonna hide your name so it's anonymous. But I, as a teacher, if you've never done a Nearpod, I can see student responses on my screen as you guys submit them. I can see some of you guys are doing pretty good. We'll review them all when you're done. All right, let's look at the answers now. I know some of you guys aren't done, but let's just continue moving forward so we can get everything in today. So you should be able to see on your screen your answers and kind of see what you got right and what you got wrong. Does everyone get to see their answers right now? Everyone's looking. Anyone have any questions about any of them? So that first one, the Vincent van Gogh with a selfie and a phone, you know, it's just kind of giving the full context of the image. The second one, that was the name of the painting. You just can say the name of the painting. You don't have to go all the way into like, there are dark tones and shades. For someone that doesn't have vision, that's not going to be extremely meaningful. The next one was Galileo facing the Inquisition, and the judge asks him, so any text that's on that image has to be put into that alt text. It's good to know. The last one, here's one of those, you know, the scientific method is a big complex thing. So you can see that the alt text is longer and has a full explanation. All right. Then it's the name of the person in the photo, smiling, so good action of what they're doing. This was a logo, so the logo and then a description of what that logo looks like. This was the Calvin and Hobbes, and it had like the full alt text of any text that was on the image, and some description of the image itself. And then, oh, that's it. All right, so hopefully I give you some practice doing alt text. If you're having trouble with alt text, definitely that's something to reach out for help from your ITC. If we have enough room to write out the alt text for the scientific method. If you don't, you can always additionally add that as a caption below the picture, could be helpful if you can't fit it all into the alt text. All right, the next item is headings. So sometimes we would add, let's see, I'm gonna make this small. Maybe we're writing a whole page of information, and we have different sections to our information. So my first section would be how to log in to Canvas. And then my next section is going to be what is Canvas all about? Maybe as you know, I previously, if I was going to just print this out, I would have just changed this font to be bigger with the font change. But what you actually need to do to these headings is change them with the headings. That is going to allow the screen reader to bounce around the page and read those headings to the person using the screen reader rather than reading all of the text. So you want to highlight those separated sections of text you create with headings. So you might be like, where is heading 1 here? Heading 1 is actually going to be the title of your page. So the screen reader would be like heading 1 to this person using the screen reader. It would say practice, and then it would read the subheadings below. So just like we with vision are able to scan to a page and get to what we want quickly, making the headings and using the headings allows a person using a screen reader to navigate the page quickly. Are there any questions about that, Emily?
Nope. The only question that came in was if you needed to alt text for decorative purposes, and I just let them know, and I'll let everyone know, like, there is a way you should still write that it's decorative so they know that if they can have some vision that it is, yeah, just check the box so they know it's not necessary.
Yep, exactly. Thank you. All right, so that's headings. That's number 3. The next one, oh, and this was a video about doing headings. So these will all be available to you again after in the course. Yeah, just something we want to emphasize, and always remember that accessibility is more important than aesthetics. I know sometimes, especially, you know, those teaching younger students, we get really hung up into the aesthetics of how our page looks. And we really have to remember that the content is the most important and making it accessible is the most important. So putting that aside, that will really want you to emphasize on that when we get to tables, which is gonna make some of you guys scream because we like to use tables as formatting, but you just can't do it. Another thing as far as helping someone using a screen reader with other accommodations is never use color as part of the directions. So someone, you know, using a screen reader wouldn't be able to differentiate the text color. Also, our students who are colorblind can't use those colors. So don't say, do the items in green or do the items in red. Someone won't be able to see those things using a screen reader. And remember, about 7% of the US population is colorblind. So even if you don't have a student that's fully blind, you may have someone who can't use that in your classroom as a direction. All right, let's see. Just gonna move ahead, past the videos. All right, add direct links for embedded materials. So for instance, I will show you. On the attendance page, which we're gonna make go live at the end of the session, we have embedded a Google form onto the page, which is great because for a lot of students with executive functioning, embedding anything we can embed onto Canvas, and if you're not coming to the embedding course tomorrow, I recommend it. Anything that we can embed onto the page can really help students with executive functioning not have to have a zillion tabs open and not have to go to a lot of places. But to keep this in mind, this embedded material right here is not accessible for someone with a screen reader. So we also always need to put the direct link to the material we are embedding above the embed. So if I'm using a screen reader, I can just click on that link and then go to that attendance form instead of doing it here on the screen. The next thing is about when you make hyperlinks. When you make hyperlinks, that you make sure that your links are words. So you can say here, you can see this link says today's attendance form. It doesn't say click here. You want your link where there's something going to also show the context of where it's taking the person that is going to click on it. So never make a link where it says here or click here or directions. Make it a fully descriptive link. Emily, any questions about the linking things?
Nope, you're all set.
All right. Number 6, make sure all your documents are accessible. So when you make a Word document, make sure you're running it through that accessibility checker that we've had that Keystone training on, you know, the past 3 years. Make sure you're doing that accessibility checker. And I have a video in the classroom, if you forgot how to do that, we'll show you. And also make sure your PDFs are accessible. I've seen a lot of things about putting a PDF or an image in the background of a Google slide or a PowerPoint slide and having a kid write over it, okay? When you do that, that text that is on that image is not accessible. So that is not an accessible activity to create. Remember, if the screen reader can't read the text, it's not accessible. So any text on images is not going to be accessible. I would recommend you reach out to your ITC to hopefully work with you on some ideas of ways to make that type of activity accessible. If you are also a Google school, I recommend the Grackle add-on for Word, for Google Docs and Google Slides. It's just like the accessibility checker in Word, and it can make sure your Google documents are accessible. Any questions about that, Emily?
Nope.
All right, we're almost done. There's only 10 of these. The tables. All right, this is the one that you guys are all wanting to know about because, you know, you want to be able to lay out your buttons nicely and you want to, you know, make that a thing. You can't. You can only use tables for data. And I don't want to like say, oh, but even if it's a small table. No, you just can't. It is not accessible. A person who's using a screen reader is going to get there. And they're going to be like, I don't understand any of this. Like, it's not going to make any sense to them. So do not use tables for formatting. Yes, you can technically do some tricks to make it pass the accessibility checker, but no, you shouldn't. It's bad form. It's unprofessional. Again, you can only use tables for data. And the next website, if you do need to make tables for data, and again, it's in the website, we'll show you how to do that. Basically, you'll have to right click on a cell and make it, give it a heading. And then you'll have to associate each cell in your table with a heading so that it would know, oh, this is a year, and it goes in the year column. This is the number of people. So again, only use tables for data. We have to remember that a lot of the things we created when we were just using print, you know, they're not accessible digitally. So we would use tables like to make a worksheet and lay the worksheet out nicely, but that we were printing it out. It wasn't a digital thing. And by law, we have to make everything digital accessible. So that website will show you how to do the tables in Canvas. All right, color contrast. And so I have an example right here on the screen for you. Hopefully you can see one of these pieces of text better than the other. Contrast is very important. So you want to make sure that you're using a good contrast of colors on any images or any text in a background that you choose. There is a contrast checker it will be in the classroom that you can use to check your pages, but you know, if they're distinct enough, you're not going to need that, but this on the right side would definitely not pass a contrast checker. All right, so here's the little website you can use. So you can put the codes in for the different colors you're using and see if they are contrasted enough. So if you're making something in Canva, for instance, I would put those color codes in here to just make sure that the colors contrast enough. Any questions, Emily?
I answered it, but I want to see what your answer is. What would you recommend for a digital calendar, since calendars are often tables, but they're not actually a table?
Well, Canvas has a built-in calendar where all of the assignments will be going. So what would the purpose of another calendar be?
So that was my question. This is Sarah. And the reason I'm asking is the calendar that's there will show the students every assignment that they have.
Yep.
Versus if I want a calendar just for my class, so that if a kid missed Tuesday and they just want to go see what Tuesday was, they can pull the calendar and just get our full agenda of everything that we covered that day.
Then I would just keep it as a list.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're going to have their little coming up list if there was any assignments coming up, and then they could view the calendar. You could also just teach them how to toggle off the different calendars on the calendar page. So, you know, they can click the little square, you know, and highlight and turn off certain calendars off. So if they just want to see just your calendar, then they will. So I would teach kids how to do that.
What if we're not building the, so you're telling me I should build my agenda on an assignment page, not on an actual page?
No, it could be an actual page, but I would just make it a list. I wouldn't make it in a calendar shape.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Number 9, the accessibility checker. On every Canvas page, you're going to see this little guy. That's the ally symbol. And you're going to click on him and you are going to use him to check, or maybe her, or maybe they, I don't know. But they are where you're going to click and they are going to tell you if your page is accessible or not. However, this person is not perfect, okay? Just like all of us. And there are certain things that they cannot detect. So one, they cannot detect if information is relayed in color alone. So if you said those things like pick green or do the things in green, the accessibility checker is not that intuitive. It can't pick up all those things. Two, it can also not pick up poorly created alt text. So if you wrote bad alt text and if it's still just that file name, if there's something in that box, it's gonna pass. So you gotta make sure the alt text is good. Number three, if your video is missing closed captions, it's not gonna be able to check for that. And number four, if your page is poorly organized, it can't test for that. So if you didn't use headings, it's not gonna know. And also just if it's not organized well, which is something that we need to do for all students, it's also not going to be able to pick up on that. So those are some things you manually have to check for every time you make a page. Any questions about that, Emily?
Nope.
No. Okay. So on a page, let me show you, you'll just click it and then it will tell you if there's any errors. It will tell you how to fix them. And then it will also, let's see, try this one. So I'm going to edit this page. And then my bottom corner, I click the little guy. I only have a link here and it's words, so I passed. But again, if you have any of those things that need a manual check, you're just not going to do it. It's not going to pick it up. So make sure you do those manual checks as well. And number 10, and my time is almost up, is also installing the Wave extension browser. So I have that installed up here and you can install that on your computer and that is a second check. Carla Tilkner, our webmaster of our district, isn't extremely pleased with this accessibility checker, so she would love everyone to please also use the Wave browser extension to check. You would just click on it and it would tell you any other things that you need to fix. Let's see if what comes up. So it would give, you would look for this errors area. Alerts, you can't do much about, and then you can't do much about anything on the outside that's actually Canvas stuff. You just want to look for anything that's in the box, that the rich content editor box that you created. So that is the second level check. And now we're going to wrap up this topic with a little quiz. Emily, were there any questions?
Nope.
All right. So just remember, we're keeping our students at like the forefront of our mind, and we are keeping, you know, accessibility and content first, aesthetics second. I know we all want to like set up our classrooms and make it a nice environment, just like we would in our physical spaces, but you know, and we can do that, but we just have to also keep the accessibility stuff in mind. And so hopefully also by just doing this little Nearpod, you can kind of see if Nearpod during a Zoom is something you feel like students could handle. If it's something that might be too hard to do both a Zoom and a Nearpod, then maybe you just want to do mostly Nearpods as the self-paced Nearpods, and students can do it on their own. But hopefully this gives you also an idea of just something you can do with students when you are in that face-to-face time, because we want to use that for interaction and community building and also relaying content. So I'll just wrap up with these questions. What do you need to remember? The answer was all of them. You need to remember captioning, alt text, headings, and embedding links. What does an accessibility checker miss? It missed 3 of those 4 things. So it missed the quality of the alt text, the quality of the captions, and the presence of captions, but it does pick up on the presence of alt text. So as long as something's in that box, it's gonna say you passed. So you're just gonna make sure that it's something good. Who does accessibility help? Everyone. Doesn't matter if you have a disability or an accommodation need, it's gonna help you. Why is it important? Because it's legal, ethical, and professional. And lastly, documents given to students also have to be accessible. That is true. So, all right, I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna pass it over to Emily.
Okay. So we're gonna flip a little bit, and instead of thinking about accessibility, we're gonna think about how to make sure when you're doing Zoom, how do you do a Zoom? What do you do in Zoom? How do you set it up? And then how do you make sure the things you're doing are accessible? So I'm gonna screen share my desktop. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do, if you haven't done yet, is you need to authenticate your Zoom. So for most of you, don't judge how many emails I currently haven't read. You're going to just go into your 365, the web version, click on the waffle, and then you'll select Zoom. And then you know you've gone into Zoom from the county. If you've not yet done it, it will give you a little pop-up that says you need to transition your account to one that is owned by Jason Stevens. Seems a little sketchy at first, unless you watch all the school board meetings, and then you'll know that Jason Stevens is the county's web tech guy who runs everything virtual, and they just set it up, instead of calling it the Prince William County Zoom, they called it the Jason Stevens Zoom. That's gonna then ensure that when you're in Zoom, in your profile, you would see the county URL right here in the middle. For most of you, it's a pretty easy, quick flip that you just click through the buttons. However, if you took advantage of Zoom being free during spring closures, or you paid for an upgraded account during spring and you used your school email, you're gonna have to sign into that account, transfer that account to a personal email, and then follow that click through the waffle step so that you can authenticate. Your key is that you want it to look like this, where it shows pwcs-zm-edu. If you do Zoom from the app, that's also going to be the URL it asks for when you're setting it up. The reason you want to authenticate is that when you meet with students, you want to have authenticated users only. That's going to ensure that only your students are in and that they've signed in with their 365. So you know who's in your class. It's only the students who should be there. They don't have any random friends they have sent links to. We saw a lot of that in the spring when schools started going virtual. Friends would share their Zoom link with other friends. Things went wrong. So keeping it locked down to PWCS means it's only your students, or they gave their account to somebody and then they can still track back who it was. And when you set up meetings, you'll set up clicking to authenticate. So when you've signed into Zoom, you'll sign in with your regular 365, your main profile. You can add a picture. Your display name is here. You'll have a meeting ID. You should make sure that you see this part. You can also see that you're a licensed user and you can meet with 300 students. So that means that you can very easily do your small class instruction time, but you can also have your office hours open on Mondays. And should you be a high school teacher with 300 students, if every kid showed up at once, not a problem. Well, it might be a problem as a teacher, but it won't be a problem for your Zoom account. You also would probably want to make sure you have your date and time correct, so when you make events, the calendar syncs correctly. So those are your main parts of your Zoom in your settings. Meetings is where you're going to spend a lot of your time. You can set up Zoom meetings in 2 different places. You can set it up here in your Zoom account, or you can set them up in your Canvas. So I'll show you both ways. So you can also see, once you've made your meeting list, they are all here and you can go back and change them. So if you need to schedule a meeting, you're just going to click schedule a meeting. Then we could call this office hours. From a logistical standpoint, I would name things in a specific way so you aren't confused and students aren't confused. So if you're going to meet with your 6th period science class on Tuesday, call it 6th period science. You can describe it if you want. Set the date and the time, how long it'll be. If it's your office hours and they're always the same day and time, you can have it recur and then have it end on a certain point so that it just keeps rolling. The link will always stay the same. And then you'll scroll down a little bit and you can then decide. You never want to check this enable join before host. You don't want students to get in there before you. So leave that one unchecked. You want to come in and then have your students wait in the waiting room till you're ready. With students, you will check only authenticated users can join. And that means everyone will sign in with their 365. So other teachers can sign in or students can sign in. Unless you're having a special guest or a virtual field trip, in which case you'd uncheck it that day for that event, but no others. We'll talk about breakout rooms in a few minutes, but you could pre-make breakout rooms. And then for student meetings, you'll want to click record the meeting automatically, since we want to record meetings. If you are having a department meeting or you're a co-teacher, you could add the second teacher here in alternative hosts, and then that teacher could be the one to start the meeting. Otherwise, you'll just leave it as is and click save. And now I can see I have my Zoom meeting, the name of it, when it is. You can add this to your calendar very easily. If you otherwise could just copy the link and give it to your students. And you are then good to go. Are there any questions so far, Katie, on just making a meeting?
No, I think I got them. Well, here's a couple. Would you record every class meeting in office hours?
That is, I would say yes, just better safe than sorry. We've yet to hear an official answer from the county. I'm sure they're leaning towards yes.
And does it automatically save on Zoom?
Yes. So when you are signed in My Meetings, you would see, if you had some in here, your recordings. And you'd have your cloud recordings and your local recordings. And that's where you could find the recording that you made. They haven't said that you have to post the recording, but I would always record any meeting you have with a student and just be very cautious so you know that you've done everything right and no one can ask later.
Yeah, you would do it to the cloud. If you do it to your computer, it's going to make it run pretty slow. So I would recommend to record them to the cloud. The next person says, can you set the only authenticated and record options as default so you don't have to check the boxes every time you create a meeting?
Yes. So in your settings, you can make a bunch of setting changes, which is our next topic. So perfect question. So yeah, in settings, you already have it defaulted to the waiting room on. Down here under customize waiting room, you can even add a waiting room description where you can say like, my office hours are Mondays from 1 to 2 or 3. And then you're good. So like anytime they tried to get in, they would see this, or they could come back to it later. And I would always have the waiting rooms defaulted on, customize your waiting room so they see the same message just in case. And then you can see as you go through, like only authenticated users is defaulted to on for me now. And then, yeah. Okay. Any other questions from the other part, Katie?
No, I think we got it.
Okay, yeah. So as you scroll through, you will probably figure out, and we're gonna share with you a file that has some recommended settings. So there's some things turned on already, like students can't join before you. That's already locked to off. It's defaulted to people are muted, just makes it easier. You'll also want to teach your students some WebEtiquette and Netiquette as you teach them digital citizenship. So how do you learn in a Zoom classroom? How do you ask a question? Some of this has been modeled really well throughout spring and summer Canvas trainings and Zoom PDs, of like having a chat where you ask questions there, and when the teacher takes pauses, they check it to answer questions.
Hey, someone wants to know, will you explain the difference between a personal meeting ID and auto-generated?
Yes. Actually, Katie, you want to take that one since you're there?
Yeah, so your personal meeting ID, that's like your room, that's just yours. Auto-generated is like anytime you make a meeting, that's the link that will be created. So if you're like me in ITC, or you as the teacher, you might want to make your personal meeting room, that's your office hours place. And you just give that one link to all your kids and they would go there anytime that you have office hours. They can only get in if you're there. So that's what I would do, is just use that personal meeting ID as the office hours for all your kids. I would add it as a redirect link in each of your classrooms.
Yeah, so I'll show you really quick. So like in one of my classes, my very first redirect is like my link to me. So students, you could just name it your redirect office hours, and it would be right there for them to click. You obviously have to remind them day and time of it. They might just click it and they'll see, if you're not there, they'll see the waiting room message that says not the right date and time.
And
But-
if it's 1 a.m., you'll get an email that they're waiting.
Yep, like we got
Pretty hilarious.
all day today, and people saw the link when it went out and they clicked on it, and we woke up this morning to messages of people are waiting for your meeting.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Hopefully that helps you, Karen.
having unique meeting IDs for unique meetings is like very nice, because then you don't have to wonder when things are. And then having that standing office hours link, so you don't have to constantly look for it, is just like one easy organizational logistical trick. And definitely add all of your Zoom links as calendar events on your calendar so that you know where they all are. They would, if you make your event in Canvas, it shows up in that Canvas list, like how you got into today's training, but it's not going to sync to your calendar. So adding them to your calendar will help a lot so you stay organized. So the other way you can make a Canvas or Zoom meeting is within your Canvas class. You would click on Zoom and you would just schedule a new meeting from here. It defaults to being the name of your class. So you'll probably want to change this to that day's lesson or activity or what you want to call your class. And then you just save it and it will show up in your Zoom list. And this will just create a running list of Zoom events you have for that specific class. Are there any other questions about scheduling a meeting?
No. Siobhan said, if you're in Canvas, can you change the settings? The answer is no. You got to do that in Zoom directly. And the other question is, if you only have one set of kids, like if you're an elementary teacher, could you just use your personal meeting ID? And yeah, you could totally do that.
Yeah. It is nice when you, if you're gonna, this is depending on your role, when you make individual Zoom meetings, you can name them different things so that students know what they are. So that might be helpful for students and parents, like in elementary school. We're going to talk about breakout rooms in a moment, but like not all teachers and parents are comfortable with breakout rooms. So you could make separate ones and name them based on which group of kids or which activity it is, or what time they come back, especially in elementary school. Like you're going to have the same kids, but someone's helping them. Keeping track of time is a learning curve for them. So you could have it say 9 a.m. reading class, and then an 11 a.m. social studies class, and then a 1 p.m. math, even if it repeats every day, so they know what they're clicking in and what they need ready for that class time.
Emily, could you go into the course settings and show them where they may need to drag up Zoom?
Yeah, so in each course, and you'll have to do this for every course you have, you'll click settings, and then I'm already in there, navigation. And then this is the order you have for this class navigation bar. So not your overall navigation, but class navigation. And Zoom might be defaulted down here to this gray stuff, and you would just click it and drag it from the where you want it to go.
Yeah, it will be down there in all of the classes, so we'll have to drag it up. Yeah.
Because as a reminder, conferences exist, but we can't use conferences. There's like a 5 conference limit countywide, so not something you can rely on. So just click your Zoom, drag it to the top, and I would think about putting it towards the very top so it's the easiest thing for them to find, because they're going to be running late when they start waking up at 7:30 for the first time in months, and make it an easy click for them. Any other questions about making a meeting? Okay, so you've seen us screen share. You've probably seen quite a bit of screen sharing for the last few days. When you screen share, you can decide what you share. So right now I'm sharing my whole desktop just because I had things I was clicking between. But if you haven't cleaned up your desktop, or you also have Gradebook open, maybe you don't want to think about clicking share desktop. You might, when you choose to screen share, you can choose what, if you're going to share the desktop, a specific application you have open, or if you're going to attach something else. So What you screen share should be something you are quite thoughtful about, making sure that you don't accidentally show any student privacy information, grades, graded work, emails about students, any of that kind of stuff. Okay. When you share, you'll also want to share the share computer sound if you're going to show any videos. And you can very easily switch between what you're sharing. So you would just from the top click new share, and you can switch from sharing the desktop to just sharing my browser or my Zoom, and then it redoes it. But as you can see, when you're screen sharing, if you don't change your settings, people can write on the screen. So this can be a great thing if you want students to mark up something, or you want to demonstrate something, or if you're co-teaching and you're going to explain it and your co-teacher is going to write on it and annotate. It can also be a chance to teach digital citizenship because they could be writing something not so great. And if you teach middle school and high school, you can think of the things they would draw on your screen.
Emily, they said, we are still seeing the Canvas page. Can you show us where we'd be able to share computer sound? So that's something we can't actually share through screen sharing because it's part of the screen sharing process. So you can't see that screen.
Click it before you share.
Yeah, you have to click it before you share. It will be in the bottom left corner. You'll see a little box that will say share computer sound.
Yeah. And if you don't share it and you click play on that video you want your kids to watch, they're going to quickly tell you we can't hear it, and you'll realize you need to go back and click it. But keep in mind, like ideally with shorter class times with students and you're only doing about like 20 minutes of live lesson, you really want to minimize how much video time is as a class and making it more about engaging in feedback or group work, that it's probably shorter video clips to begin with as well, or something that's really helpful. So
why doesn't everyone try and, did you turn the annotation off?
No.
So everyone go ahead and try and write on her screen. And you can also, as a setting, make it so that you can see who's writing. So I can go and she can do that. You should be able to do that, Emily. Yep. Say, put the names on.
Yeah,
your
so
view
now
options.
you'll see like Sabrina just wrote a happy face. So the names don't stay for super long, but you can see as they pop up. And then if I realize, hey, this is not working for my class, or I only want them to annotate when it's time to annotate something specific, I would come up into my settings, and under more, I would click disable attendee annotation. And now if you try, you should not be able to write on the screen.
Yeah, nothing there.
So that's a great way for if you have something specific you want students to mark up or work on, turn it on when you want to use it, turn it off right afterwards. But like, don't leave it on because it's just asking for something you're going to have to deal with. Like, make your life easier.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe show them to share a whiteboard?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to click on whiteboard, and I'm going to new share my whiteboard. Okay. So now you should see the whiteboard.
Yep.
And then
so there's some cool little like tablets you can buy. So especially math teachers, you might want to look into one. I have one, it's called an XP pen. Looks like this, and it allows me to write. This was like $40 on Amazon. So that might be something that helps your workflow.
Yeah. And I think they've been very popular. I've seen a lot of Facebook posts about the XP pen one from Amazon. So Amazon price gouges at times based on demand. So try and refresh your page or look at it only once if you're going to get it. And know that like some people have had 100% success with getting it to work on their school device. Some people are getting stuck where it won't load. So we can't guarantee it will. Your T-Spec might be able to get it to help you, but not sure. Or if you're using a personal device, it should be easy to install.
It is called an XP pen. And Sarah, you asked about annotation in the breakout rooms. A student can share their screen and they can annotate on a whiteboard, just like is the one of them basically is the host and can be the host in a breakout room.
Okay. Are there any other questions before we talk about breakout rooms? Okay, so.
There isn't a way for us to show you how to open the whiteboard. You would just have that choice when you click share screen.
Yeah. And once you're sharing a screen, instead of it saying share screen, it will say new share, and you just switch which kind of sharing you're doing. Okay.
Actually, I've turned it on so all participants can share. If you just want to click share screen, you'll be able to see your options.
And we highly recommend prior to September 8th, get in, if you have a CLT, as a CLT, each of you schedule a meeting, each of you practice hosting a meeting, run through all these things with adults, and then have the next person in your CLT or your grade level team or your pod, like practice it with adults and have them practice doing the things students would do to figure it out. Don't wait till you have students to be the first time you ever host a meeting.
Oh, maybe Emily, can you stop sharing so that they can? Yeah. All right. So if you click the share, you should be able to share. Pretty sure I turned it on. But don't actually share. Don't actually go through the whole process. Just see your options. Okay. And you can see that your options are to share your desktop, a whiteboard. You can also plug in a phone, so you could show your kids how to do something on a mobile device. So those are or a specific Chrome tab or window you can select. All right.
Okay. Do you want to break out, Katie?
Sure. All right. We're going to send you to some breakout rooms. Do you want me to talk about it first?
We'll break out real quick so you can experience it, and then we'll talk through why you would or wouldn't do it.
All right. So we've pre-assigned you guys breakout rooms. So we're going to send it to you there now and open all rooms. All right. And you should be going. So you might have a button on your screen that says to take you to your breakout room. Go ahead and click on it. You're going to go to your breakout room.
Bye.
Bye. We'll see you in a minute.
What happened?
It did not pop up for some people, Katie. I think we've got
Oh. Are the people that it did not pop up for on an app?
No.
I prearranged all of them. Let's see, assign to. I'll just assign you guys to a room.
Okay.
All right, everyone's been assigned to a room now. Do you want to go? Oh, people are coming back. Oh, no, they're gone. All right, I'm going to go. Emily, are you in one? Oh. So for people that don't listen and don't come back, there is a button that I can say close all rooms, and it will close them within in a minute. It does a little countdown. So yeah, you can force everyone back into the main room if you have stragglers. It just takes, it does take a minute to close them all.
So hopefully you enjoyed your little breakout and then you all came back. So you could see like Katie sent a message that said like, please come back to the main room. And then there was a button at the bottom where you could click return to main room. Or if you didn't, it counted down and it forced you back in when she gave the time's up thing. So breakout rooms can be great. You can have students doing small group work, like figuring out different tasks or projects. They still let the teacher bounce between things. The downside is that the teacher is not in every room at the same time. They can't manage what's going on. So in an ideal world, that would mean just not knowing if they're completely on task or not. In an internet teaching world, you have no idea what they're actually up to without you there supervising. And that can be a major concern for a lot of parents, that their kids are online with other students and no one is supervising what's being said, screen shared, discussed, done. So there, as far as we know, there's not yet any rule on using or not using breakout rooms. I personally would put a huge caution on not using them unless you have very much highly trained your students on ensuring they know how to be web safe. They know the rules and expectations. They know what they're doing. And you can't record it, so you have no proof of what happened. It'll be a he said, she said. I don't personally have a child, but if I did, I think I would be very nervous about it. Like you are, like, just given everything going on. In elementary schools or even in high school, if you're going to do targeted work with students rather than doing breakout rooms, that might be better to have preset Zoom meetings with each student group so that you're in all of them. So that in that 90-minute class, you do 15 minutes of whole group Zoom work, and then you have students working on their independent tasks, and then you pull in group A for a little bit, and then they go back to their independent task, and then you pull in group B for 15 minutes, and then you pull in group C. So that way students know when their group work time with you is, but they're not in a breakout without you. So it is something to think about. It's a little more work for you. Breakout rooms might be great for like a school-wide meeting, staff development. If you're on like an admin level, or if you're a department chair, have a Zoom meeting for your department and then do breakout rooms for CLT discussions, and then you can bring everybody back. But it's not highly recommended from the student experience.
Yeah, Karen has a nice comment. She said for elementary guided readings, they were thinking about doing a whole group and then sending everyone to the waiting room except for the small group.
Yeah, which is good because then they're already signed into Zoom. Like just give them whatever task they're supposed to be working on until you need to bring them back in.
And you would just click on their name in the participant list, and you have the ability to send them to the waiting room. It says put in waiting room. So you can just click on someone's name and you can send them right there.
Yeah. Which should be like probably the easiest option because you're not getting them in and out and wondering what to do. Okay. Are there any other breakout room questions? You
Nope.
can, if you have the right student group or if it's a staff group, we have in our Canvas class for you the CSV file where you can pre-make stuff. So it is great if you're pre-planning PD. Like I know there's a couple TOSAs in here. Like if you're gonna work with staff, you can have those breakout rooms already done, especially like teacher work week stuff is gonna be very different this year. So use the breakout rooms. So they break out into the preset room and then they break out into another preset room, and the logistics are much easier than trying to drag them into rooms last minute or auto splitting them and not being sure if it's even or not. Yes. So Brian, yeah, breakout rooms are an option when you're a host. You can, in the settings, you would set like pre-make breakout rooms, and then you can upload the CSV file or you can manually do it. So great for the less classroom role employee. Okay. And then we have one last thing to talk about, unless there's any more breakout questions. Okay. So we're gonna do it and then discuss it. We'll give people another second or two. Got 4 more to go. Okay, so everybody answered. So on my end, I can see that 42 of 42 of you have voted. So I can just click end poll, and then I'm gonna click share results so that you can see the answers. So depending on what kind of poll you do, you might show your students the answer, you might not. So these polling questions were made ahead of time when Katie made the Zoom meeting. In the settings in her Zoom account when she made the meeting, you can pre-write poll questions. and then they're there to go. So this would be great if you have a planned lesson or activity. You can write out some questions to check for understanding and comprehension, or getting to know you type questions the first week of school. One of the best ways for students to learn how to use tools is to do them in a non-content way, so it's a little lower stakes. They're not stressed out about trying to understand how to use Zoom while they're getting assessed on content. So like your first poll question could just be like, what's your favorite color? And then they can pick something, so they can get used to what a poll looks like and what the results look like before they see it.
So Karen asked a really good question about captioning, and it's just not like, you do have a option for captioning, but we don't have a service tied to it. So a hack that I would recommend is using a Google slide in present mode, and you can turn closed captionings on that. So if you share your screen and you share that presentation of a Google slide and you turn the closed captioning on with that, it would caption your meeting. And you don't have to have anything on the slide. You could just have a picture, but just use that as like a way to have the meeting live captioned.
And like you can caption things afterwards. So like if we are recording this, we could then upload this to Stream or to Studio, and then it can add captions, but it wouldn't be live captions if a student needed it. So it's just do your students need live captions? Do they need them later to share the video? Okay. So for polling, I'm going to quickly screen share my desktop to show you how to make some. Okay, so in my meetings, okay, so I can see that I have a meeting tomorrow morning. I'm going to click on my meeting, and then at the bottom, I'm going to edit it. You could also do this when you're making the meeting. I just am coming back to it. So at the very bottom, there is a poll option, and I can add questions. So I would just click this add button, and then I can write if I want it to be anonymous or not. Oops. And I put it down in the question. And then I can have some option choices. And then you could have them answer multiple questions at once or just one at a time. And then I just click save. And then I'll have my poll questions ready to go ahead of time. So if you're planning what you're doing with students, you can pre-make those questions for you. Okay. Any other polling questions?
Yes, Star, I can't type fast enough. So on a reoccurring office hour meeting, that's not what you would normally use a polling, because you'd have to do that ahead of time. So you'd want it on a new meeting, or is that something you can do on a reoccurring meeting?
I mean, you could make them ahead of time, but you would want to think about what those questions were to make sure they're worth asking every time if it's reoccurring. So in our Canvas class, we'll have a bunch of resources, which we're going to turn on now that we've walked through everything. So in modeling how to like do stuff with students, you don't want to overwhelm them with all the information at once. So you might pre-make a lot of your modules, and then you turn on the resources as they need them. So if you went back to our Canvas class, you can see that all of your information is now published. So there's guides and helpful hits for accessibility stuff, as well as Zoom. So we've got a Wakelet with Zoom step-by-step directions for setting it up. There's a teacher guide, there's a student guide. The template is there if you are going to use Breakout Rooms for the CSV file. So all the stuff we've went through today is now live in our class for you to have to refer to later.
All right, and the link to the attendance is in the chat as well as in that item in the classroom. So just fill that out and you are good for today.
And if you have any friends who did not take any of today's trainings, there's 3 different Canvas basics classes. There's integration courses, and then they'll be adding more throughout the teacher work week. So if you didn't get any in yet, or you know any coworkers that haven't, just let them know to keep checking the new professional learning, and things will get added over time.
Actually, Karen, if you just want to, if you're interested in the embedding training for tomorrow, email me because that is closed in the ERO now. They close registration a day before. All right, thank you guys for coming. That class tomorrow is at 8:30 a.m.